We live in interesting times.
For tonight's headlines.
Measles outbreak in the Philippines is extended beyond the Metro Manila.
Deadly drug-resistant tuberculosis, as lethal as Ebola and tough to treat in even the best hospitals, is a blinking red health security risk the world should be a lot more worried about, the head of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria says.
U.S. President Donald Trump, who has declared victory over the Islamic State group, said Wednesday that he expected the extremists to lose all their remaining territory in Syria in around a week.
British politicians react angrily after European Union leader Donald Tusk injects hellfire into the Brexit crisis, damning British leaders for their failure to plan for the divorce.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. The Department of Health confirmed a measles outbreak in the National Capital Region. Health Secretary Francisco Duque declared an outbreak of highly contagious disease in the National Capital Region and Central Luzon. Take a listen.
Is raising once again today the red flag for measles in other regions of Luzon, Central and Eastern Visayas, aside from yesterday's declaration in the National Capital Region. We are expanding the outbreak from the Metro Manila to other regions as cases have increased in the past weeks, and to strengthen surveillance of new cases and alert mothers and caregivers to be more vigilant. And that is what I'd like to underscore.
In an interview, Duque reiterated his agency's call for parents to submit their children to anti-measles vaccination to contain the spread of the disease. He warned that bronchopneumonia from measles complication can be lethal. So he said parents should not be complacent about it. The DOH Epidemiology Bureau reported that the number of measles cases in the NCR already reached 196 from January 1st to 19. This is much higher compared to the 20 cases recorded during the same period in 2018. In 2018, the DOH-EB recorded 3,646 measles cases in the region against 351 cases in 2017.
And I should also like to emphasize that the immunization plus vitamin A supplementation of 9-month-old children and even younger and unvaccinated individuals are still the best defense against measles. The DOH is advising mothers, the public, to bring their children at first sign of fever to the nearest health facility for prompt treatment and proper case management. Meron po tayong mga bakuna. Ito po ay napatunayan ng dekalidad, ligtas, at epektibo, at ito po ay walang bayad. Binabayaran po ng inyong gobyerno mula po sa buwis ng taong bayan.
Measles is a highly contagious respiratory disease caused by a virus. It is transferred from person to person through sneezing, coughing, and close personal contact. Its signs and symptoms include cough, runny nose, red eyes, conjunctivitis, fever, and skin rashes lasting for more than 3 days. Aside from bronchopneumonia, other complications include diarrhea, middle ear infection, encephalitis or swelling of the brain, malnutrition, and blindness, which may lead to death.
A measles outbreak that has affected more than 24 people, the majority of them children in the U.S. state of Washington, has prompted health officials to declare a state of emergency. In 2000, the U.S. declared that measles had been eliminated, but it has since made a comeback, which has been tied to imported cases and the rise of the anti-vaccine movement.
4 of our 37 schools were impacted with potential measles cases. That's about 3,300 students, another 300 staff members that we had to ensure either had immunization or immunity from measles.
Measles is incredibly contagious. You can be in a room, if you're susceptible, you can be in a room that somebody with measles left 2 hours earlier and still get the disease. If a person with measles meets a population that's unvaccinated, about 90% of folks, if you have enough people who are vaccinated, it provides a cocoon so the vaccine can't meet anybody who can pass it on to anybody else. And that's what we define as herd immunity. We're well below that in the Pacific Northwest.
The outbreak began near Portland, Oregon, and the start of the year, and quickly spread to nearby Clark County and King County, both in Washington. Health officials have warned that people infected with the disease had visited schools, churches, a dentist's office, a Costco store, an IKEA store, and the Portland airport. Officials said the majority of those infected are children, many of whom have not been immunized against the disease. They added the outbreak could still be in its infancy, as the incubation period of the virus averages 14 days. Those infected can spread measles to others 4 days before and 4 days after the rash appears.
There is no single measles vaccine available, and so parents only have the choice between nothing or this very controversial, flawed MMR vaccine. And it's not for policymakers to try to make that decision for the parents. It's up to the parents to decide what risk they're willing to accept.
The impact of this current outbreak has been pretty significant in our area. Washington and Oregon tend to be somewhat of a region where we immunize less than other parts of the country, and we're seeing the effects of that. Certain populations have been exposed to the measles, and we've had a significant issue the last few weeks. And unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong, but I think the cases are going to get more frequent and spread throughout the country from this epicenter.
The highly contagious disease can cause severe diarrhea, pneumonia, and vision loss, and ultimately can be fatal. The World Health Organization in November warned that measles cases worldwide had jumped more than 30% in 2017 compared to the previous year, in part because of children not being vaccinated.
Meanwhile, a batch of more than 12,000 blood plasma treatments produced by a state-owned pharmaceutical company in China was found to have been contaminated with HIV. On Wednesday, the National Health Commission said it has instructed medical institutions to cease use of the batch of intravenous immunoglobulin produced by Shanghai Xinzheng Pharmaceutical after it received a report that the batch was tested to be HIV positive. Immunoglobulins are antibodies produced from blood plasma. The immune system uses immunoglobulins to combat pathogens, and it can be used to treat a wide variety of diseases, including arthritis and many forms of cancer. No patients have been reported to have contracted HIV, according to a quote from a representative of Jiangxi Provincial Disease Control Center. Local reports did not say if officials knew how the more than 12,000 doses became tainted, but Tuesday's statement said that experts believe the risk of HIV infections is very low for anyone who's been exposed. The Jiangxi Provincial Center for Disease Control and Prevention was the first to report the contamination, according to the New York Times. The NHC said it will continue to monitor the situation and will cooperate with China's State Food and Drug Administration. It also announced a follow-up monitoring program for patients who use the drug.
The head of a global health fund warned that a deadly drug-resistant tuberculosis, as lethal as Ebola and tough to treat in even the best hospitals, is a blinking red worldwide threat. The Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria is on a mission to eradicate the three epidemics and plans to spend around $12 billion on it over the next 3 years.
Frankly, we should all be more worried about multi-drug resistant TB than we are. It gets nothing like the level of attention it should do. To give you, just to sort of put it in context, Ebola has a fatality rate of about 50%. MDR-TB has a fatality rate of about 50%. But the reality is we are not gearing up and taking nearly seriously enough MDR-TB. This is a disease that is extremely difficult to treat in the best hospitals in the world, does not obey borders or need visas, nor pay attention to how wealthy you are. And at the moment, about 25% of those 600,000 cases are being diagnosed and treated. The ambition of the Global Fund is to end the epidemics of AIDS, TB, and malaria by 2030. However, the blunt truth is we are not on track for that ambition. We have made huge progress against all three diseases. Deaths from AIDS and malaria are down by roughly 50%, from TB by a little over 20%. But if you compare the trajectory in terms of new infections and deaths against what we need to do, we need to step up the fight. I don't think partnering with the private sector comes naturally to all the sort of actors in the global health world. There's a fair amount of sort of distrust and misunderstanding between the global health community and private actors.
America is the largest contributor to the World
Earlier
Bank,
this week, U.S. President Donald Trump called for a concerted push to end his country's AIDS epidemic within 10 years, though he did not say how much money would be plowed into the effort. Sands said, as health authorities slacken the pace, new variations of drug-resistant diseases are turning up, threatening progress already made and triggering a resurgence.
The World Meteorological Organization revealed that the last 4 years have been the warmest on record. Take a look.
Secretary General notes with concern the data released by the World Meteorological Organization that have confirmed that 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018 as the 4 warmest years on record. The data released by the WMO confirms the urgency of addressing climate action, as emphasized in the recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change special report on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The Secretary General notes that to make these transformations, we need to significantly increase the global level of climate action and ambition. The Secretary General's Climate Action Summit on 23 September of this year aims to mobilize political will to raise ambition to the achievement of the goals of the Paris Agreement and also demonstrate the transformative action in all areas where it is needed.
Consolidated analysis by the World Meteorological Organization of 5 leading international data sets showed that the global average surface temperature in 2018 was approximately 1.0 degrees Celsius with a margin error of +0.0 or plus minus 0.13 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial baseline. It ranks as the fourth warmest year on record. Australia had its warmest January on record, with heat waves unprecedented in their scale and duration. Tasmania had its driest January on record with destructive bushfires. There has been a long-term increase in extreme fire weather and in the length of the fire season across large parts of Australia, according to its Bureau of Meteorology. Intense heat waves are becoming more frequent as a result of climate change. Authorities said extreme heat in the southern hemisphere contrasted with extreme cold in parts of North America in January.
Two people have been killed in Rio de Janeiro as heavy rains and strong winds trigger landslides in the Brazilian. The municipality of Rio de Janeiro declared a state of crisis due to heavy rains. The winds reached up to 110 kilometers per hour. It caused flooding. Trees fell, and there's fear of landslides in the favelas. In the favela of Rocinha, the largest in the city, 153.2 millimeters of water fell in 4 hours, more than half of the average for the month of February. Climate change and the contamination of the Limpa River are having a profound impact on the Guatemalan residents living in the river's basin, with many no longer able to rely on the river for food sources. As one community official says, the emergency could soon reach famine levels.
Se sabe que son las aguas mieles que están afectando el río Lempa. Y lamentamos, ¿verdad?, porque donde miramos que cada día los peces se están desapareciendo, ya el río Lempa ya no es apto ni aún para bañarse, ni aún para que los animales tomen agua, no digamos ya para el consumo humano, ¿verdad?, porque lo miramos contaminado.
Consideramos que hay una emergencia, estamos cercanos a las condiciones de hambruna, o sea, esa es la tendencia, estamos pasando de condiciones mínimas alimentarias y estamos llegando cerca a la condición de hambruna.
More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns.
Hindi lang talent ang mahalaga, kundi commitment. Dapat marunong ka magpahalaga sa oras mo at sa oras ng iba.
Sabi nga ni Direk, mahalaga ang commitment. Isa pa, dapat humble lang tayo. Hindi lang sa salita, pero sa mga kilos at mga ginagawa natin nakikita.
Tama.
Good evening, I'm Alfred Acenas, your Eagle correspondent from Hawaii, sitting in for Alma Angeles. Moving on with the news. An international meeting to negotiate a solution to the Venezuelan crisis was set to open Thursday in Montevideo as President Nicolas Maduro and opposition leader Juan Guaido sparred over allowing humanitarian aid into the crisis-racked country. Now, the European Union, or EU, 8 other European countries and 5 Latin American nations were scheduled to meet in the Uruguayan capital with the goal of creating conditions for a peaceful political process, according to a European diplomatic source. The initiative, originally launched by Mexico and Uruguay as neutral countries conference on Venezuela, has evolved into a meeting of a contact group launched by the EU in late January and joined by Costa Rica, Bolivia, and Ecuador. On Wednesday, Maduro, having rejected an EU ultimatum on organizing snap presidential elections, welcomed the meeting and expressed support for, quote, all steps and initiatives to facilitate dialogue, end of quote. But Guaido, who on January 23rd declared himself Venezuela's interim president and is now recognized by 40 countries, has strongly rejected any talks with the government, dismissing it as a way for Maduro to buy time.
Russia said it had counted on being invited to an international dialogue in Montevideo on Venezuela's political crisis, but was told it could not participate. And I quote, "We were counting on Russia having possibility to get involved in the work that will take place in Montevideo today, at least as an observer state, but Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov told the RIA Novosti news agency, and I quote, "We were told that such a format is not possible," he added, without specifying who had made the decision. Ryabkov also warned that destructive outside interference, especially armed interference in Venezuela's internal affairs, is the worst possible scenario. Russia is a strong supporter of President Nicolas Maduro and has denounced the opposition's usurpation of power. The Kremlin this week slammed what it said were attempts to interfere in Venezuela's domestic affairs after several European countries recognized Guaido as interim leader. The two countries have a long history of ties, and Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez, known for his tirades against the United States, was a frequent visitor to the Kremlin.
Meanwhile, hundreds of government supporters gather in Venezuela's capital of Caracas to show support for embattled President Nicolas Maduro, who is facing increased pressure from opposition leader Juan Guaido to set a transitional government and hold a new presidential poll. Maduro has flatly rejected demands for new elections, telling Spanish television he would not, quote, cave in to the pressure, end of quote. He has supported plans for a meeting of Latin American and EU states in a contact group in Montevideo on Thursday, though. The UN said 40 people were killed in clashes with security forces in a week of protests last month, coinciding with Guaido's self-proclamation as acting leader. Local NGO Foro Penal said almost 1,000 people were detained between January 21st and the 31st.
U.S. President Donald Trump, who has declared victory over the Islamic State group, said that he expected the extremists to lose all their remaining territory in Syria in around a week.
The United States military, our coalition partners, and the Syrian Democratic Forces have liberated virtually all of the territory previously held by ISIS in Syria and Iraq. It should be formally announced sometime, probably next week, that we will have 100% of the caliphate. They'll be informing us very soon, officially, that it's 100%. ISIS can no longer claim widespread ownership over local governments in Syria and Iraq. Now, you're always going to have people. They'll be around. They're sick. They're demented. But you're going to have them no matter how well we do militarily.
More than 6 out of 10 children around the world are at risk of falling into poverty due to a lack of social protection, the UN said on Wednesday, in a report that warns the situation could worsen amid continuing economic uncertainty. The study, released by the International Labor Organization, or ILO, and the UN Children's Fund, or UNICEF, shows that the situation is worse for children in Africa, where just 16% have access to a welfare safety net. Speaking in Geneva at the launch of the report, Isabel Ortiz, director of the Social Protection Fund at ILO, urged governments planning to cut welfare due to austerity measures to think again, arguing that this may have a long-term impact on children.
If we consider the total number of children from 0 to 14 years old, this represents 25% of the world population. However, only 1.1% of GDP is allocated to social protection for children. So there is a huge underinvestment gap that needs to be covered. 35% of children are covered by some type of social protection. And that is actually quite a dramatic number, if you think, because that means that 2/3 of all world children are not covered by any social protection. That is 1.3 billion children, which is a lot. Social protection can reduce poverty and children's vulnerability overnight, really, if the benefit is adequate. So countries need to make more efforts towards advancing social protection for children and other vulnerable groups.
Well, the evidence shows really clearly, and now there's impact evaluations coming from Africa, coming from Latin America, coming from Europe, which show huge impacts on children's lives. For so many kids, poverty is what is preventing them from going to school, from having health, from having nutrition. And what it shows is if you provide cash transfers to these children, you see really significant improvements in their health and in their education, which changes their future life course and their future life chances, and of course also has really big impacts on societies.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe strikes a conciliatory tone with Russia at an annual rally to demand the return of small northern isles claimed by both nations. Without explicitly demanding sovereignty of the southern Kuril Islands, Abe vows to focus on concluding an official peace treaty with Russia after meeting President Vladimir Putin 25 times, most recently last month.
戦後73年が経過してもなお、北方領土問題が解決されず、日本とロシアの間に平和条約が締結されていないのは異常な状態と言わざるを得ません。戦後73年以上残された課題の解決は容易ではありません。しかし私たちはこれをやり遂げなければなりません。
Despite the road, Tokyo and Moscow already have vibrant economic relations with the likes of Toyota and Japanese energy firms heavily invested in Russia, operating major factories and sales networks. And in recent years, Abe and Putin have discussed joint economic projects on the disputed islands between the Sea of Okhotsk and the Pacific Ocean. The Soviet army seized them in the last days of World War II, and Russia continues to control them. Tokyo's traditional refusal to recognize Moscow's sovereignty there has been a barrier to a formal peace deal. However, the two sides did sign a 1956 Soviet-Japanese declaration that Japan would receive two of the smaller islands after a peace deal.
Meanwhile, British investigators said Monday they had spotted a body in a wreckage of a plane that disappeared in the channel 2 weeks ago, carrying Argentine footballer Emiliano Sala and his pilot. Sala, age 28, was flying from France to join his new club, Premier League side Cardiff City, when the light aircraft disappeared on January 21st north of the island of Guernsey. A wreck was found on the seabed on Sunday, and closer inspection by a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, confirmed both that it was the missing plane and that the body was inside. Tragically, in video footage from the ROV, one occupant is visible amidst the wreckage, says the British government's Air Accident Investigation Branch, or AAIB, in a statement. Sala was flying to Cardiff after transferring from the French team Nantes in a 17 million euro or 19.3 million US dollar move, a record deal for the Welsh team. The plane, which was a Piper PA-46 Malibu, vanished from radar around 20 kilometers or 12 nautical miles north of Guernsey, with pilot Ibbotson the only other person on board.
Horacio Sala, father of Argentine footballer Emiliano Sala, reacts after investigators found the wreckage of a plane that disappeared in the channel 2 weeks ago, carrying his son and his pilot, and that a body had been spotted inside. Watch this.
Un hijo, una cosa esta sin esperar, no hay palabras. Estos días no se pasan las horas, no se pasa nada. Se hizo muchas cosas, se ha rezado, se ha hecho marcha en el club. Los jugadores que han puesto ahí, que han aportado dinero, porque es muy costoso todo lo que dicen, lo que es fue la búsqueda ahí, agradeciéndole a toda la gente que los apoyó, porque lo apoyó todo el mundo.
Time for another break, Sam?
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Kahit hindi batid, aaminin ko minsan ako'y manhid.
Hi, this is Mark of Shamrock. Iniimbita ko'y lahat manood this Sunday ng Young Ones sa
U.S. President Donald Trump announces David Malpass as his controversial pick to lead the World Bank. David Malpass, a senior official in the Treasury Department, is a controversial choice But if Trump wins the support of a majority, the bank's shareholders, especially the European nations, he will have the opportunity to reshape the bank. He's a senior government official known for his hardline stance against China. Malpass currently handles trade negotiations with China. He's also been a proponent of reducing the World Bank's lending to Beijing.
America is the largest contributor to the World Bank, giving it over $1 billion every year. My administration has made it a top priority to ensure that U.S. taxpayers' dollars are spent effectively and wisely, serve American interests, and defend American values. David has been a strong advocate for accountability at the World Bank for a long time.
I'm very optimistic that we can achieve breakthroughs to create growth abroad that will help us combat extreme poverty and increase economic opportunities in the developing world. At Treasury, I'm proud to say that under your administration, Mr. President, we negotiated a major capital increase and reform package for the World Bank. With shareholders and dedicated staff, there's a great opportunity now to implement these constructive reforms that will lead to faster growth and greater prosperity.
British politicians react angrily after European Union leader Donald Tusk injects hellfire into the Brexit crisis, damning British leaders for their failure to plan for the divorce. Here's more.
I've been wondering what that special place in hell looks like for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it safely.
British members of Parliament reacted to Donald Tusk's comment, wondering if there's a special place in hell for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it out safely. Quote, again, let's listen in.
Since the Prime Minister's questions has begun, the President of the European Council has said that there is a special place in hell reserved for Brexiteers.
Lovely.
I don't recall, sir, any president insulting members of this House, members of the government and the British people in such a way.
What the European Council President Donald Tusk actually said is, and I quote, "There is a special place in hell for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan of how to carry it out safely." So perhaps... Speaker, sometimes the truth hurts, doesn't it?
I'm sorry I haven't given you notice because it was not possible.
Australian flag carrier Qantas on Thursday confirmed it would not take up 8 Airbus A380s already ordered, the latest blow for the European airspace firm. In a statement, Sydney-based Qantas said it would focus instead on refurbishing its existing 12 Airbus Super Jumbo planes. The decision, which was expected, is another hit for the troubled A380 program. Airbus recently confirmed that it was in talks with Emirates to change an order of 36 A380 planes to smaller A350s. Launched a decade ago, the double-decker plane was hailed as a revolution for the industry and a challenge to Boeing's strange hold on the super-large aircraft market. But the Super Jumbo has struggled to win orders, leading it to ramp down production. Analysts point to customers demanding flights directly to their destination rather than following Airbus's model of taking a long-haul journey from hub to hub, followed by a short hop on a smaller plane. Eagle News International will be right back.
Simulan na ang araw kasama ang buong barkada ng pambansang almusal. Kami na ang bahala sa masarap niyong almusal kung saan matututo tayong magluto ng easy, delicious, and affordable recipes kasama ang ating guest chefs.
Siyempre, I want it medyo healthy pa rin na wala tayong masyadong fats or skin ng ating chicken.
Of course, meron din tayong family notes where we share tips and ideas on how to make our family happier and stronger.
Dapat marunong tayo mag-open up, di ba? Lalo na sa ating parents.
Tandaan, discipline should focus on teaching, not punishing.
Yes. Ihahain din namin sa inyo ang maiinit na balita at mahahalagang impormasyon.
Para po yun sa ikabubuti ng ating kapaligiran. Ano yung journey natin towards the 100 years?
Kaya naman, tutok na sa nag-iisang values-oriented morning show.
Pambansang Almusal!
Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 5 hanggang alas 7 ng umaga, dito lang sa Net 25.
Ang Pambansang Almusal, Pambansang Almusal.
Catriona Gray wants to be remembered as Miss Universe who had advocacy at her core. Our ABC correspondent Joanne Blanco Soriano reports from New York.
At a time when positive role models are getting harder and harder to find, the world once again turned its eyes to the Philippines with the crowning of Catriona Gray as Miss Universe. This beauty queen is a fierce advocate for different charities and causes and plans to use her title to do even more. Now living in New York, Catriona appeared at a meet and greet at the Philippine consulate in Midtown.
Let me just open it with a very brief introduction of Ms. Gray. While in Manila, she works closely with a group named Young Focus, an education-based NGO that provides free education and school scholarships for children in Tondo. Additionally, Catriona is an advocate for HIV/AIDS education, prevention, and awareness after losing a close friend to the disease. She supports organizations such as Love Yourself Philippines, and now, as Miss Universe, Catriona will work with other non-profit organizations in the U.S.
Being a Miss Universe, I'm not just focusing on the Philippines any longer. I really do want to expand my reach, whether that means working with different organizations around the world, but even learning from them. Maybe a certain country, like here in the States, has applied a certain program in regards to HIV, for example, that I could learn from and perhaps suggest back at home in the Philippines. You know, I want to have that role as a Miss Universe, and I'm sure this year I will definitely have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Joanne, sorry, I'm at Eagle Broadcasting.
Hi, Joanne. How do you want to be remembered during your reign, and how will you know that you were successful?
I want to be remembered as a Miss Universe who really had advocacy at her core, because that's really who I've been for the last 3 years. I'm more than happy to do the events and the photo shoots and the glamorous side, but I want to be remembered for the work that I did for the charities, because that for me, as a human being, not as a title holder, is fulfilling. That's what makes me go to bed at night and feel like I've done something worthwhile. And if I can be successful in raising a certain amount of money or impacting a certain group of people in such a way, then I'll look back on my year and say that I did a good job. It's so important to me because as a Miss Philippines, yes, I wear the sash, but if I were to remove the sash, I wanted to look like a Miss Philippines. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that we had that to offer in our fashion, because we have an amazing Filipino designers. Our textiles are unique to us and nowhere else in the world. And I felt like if I could just share that in a way, I know it doesn't encapsulate the whole of our culture, but it is a small aspect that I feel like especially my age group would really sit up and pay attention in that fashion industry. And it made me so proud, especially in my national costume, that even fellow Filipinos were messaging me saying, "Kat, I never knew about Mindanao and Tinalak, or I never knew about Baybayin," and you know, just different aspects of our culture, of our traditions that I was able to share in that way. And for fellow Filipinos to sit up and be like, I'm rediscovering my own culture, that made me so proud. That's why it was so important to me. I would love to have my own business, but with a livelihood program. I've really just had this love develop for our Filipino textiles, and as I'm wearing some today, I really fall in love with our fabrics and our symbolism and like my ear cuff and stuff. So I would love to have a business that reflects that would also give back to the communities that would make those fabrics. I would love to be able to have a career in music, perhaps my own album that I've toured, or be able to perform and have people sing back to me my own song. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
Reporting from the Philippine Center in New York, this is Joanne Soriano, 1 with 25.
A spectacular array of pyrotechnics lights up Hong Kong's Blade Runner-esque urban skyline, dazzling thousands of onlookers as the city celebrates the Lunar New Year. Watch this.
All right. Wow. Hey, Fat Joy.
Happy Fat Joy. I finally found Alma during our breaks.
Thank you so much, Alfred,
thank you for
dropping by and helping me out.
Yes, anytime, Alma, anytime, Sam.
How is Hawaii?
It's still there. It's still waiting for you. So so we'll always open our doors and welcome you all in.
And what's the latest news in Hawaii?
The latest news in Hawaii.
Not Aquaman, right?
Well, no. We actually have started developing some follow-up reports on what we covered last year, because last year we had a lot of events taking place. For those who remember, the false missile alert in January, to the volcanic eruptions in May, to the storms that hit during the summertime, and all that. So, and of course, on top of that, we continue to monitor climate change, the tourism industry, and whatnot, which really, you can draw some parallels between Hawaii and the Philippines and even other parts of the world too. So yes, you'll see us.
We'll be waiting
on that part of the screen
for the updates.
Yes, of course.
Of course.
Anytime.
Yes, and it's really great to have you here, Alfred.
Thanks, Sam. I finally got to meet you in person.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Zepeda. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Alfred Asenas.
And I'm Alma Angeles, and we're always 1 with 25.